Okay, so we're live. So hi everyone from wherever on whichever time zone you are joining this. Thank you for being here. Today I have my good friend Martin Pitzing. I'm interacting thanks to technology after quite a while, but we have kept in touch, and it has been wonderful being and remembering all those experiences. And yeah, like me, he's also a father to two kids, studying in kindergarten. So it has been really wonderful. So Martin, at present, he is in charge for the whole cloud infrastructure for Uniqa Insurance. Of course, being financial services organization, it is very, very important and crucial. But over the age, over the various period of his work experience, he has moved from various kind of roles. And apart from being at ESSEC, he also studied at Ludwig Maximilian University of Munich, which had so many alumni. One of them, as a science, I would say, student, I learned at I would say Max Planck. So we do read a lot of those aspects. So thank you, Martin, for being here. And it was wonderful to. And he joins us from Austria, Vienna, which is very prominent for activities of United Nations. And I was fortunate enough to travel to the city and see its beauty. Thank you, Martin, for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, everyone. Hi.
Okay, so Martin, going forward, as we were discussing that at ESSEC you studied management and then technology. When you were starting, let's say after your 10 plus 2, as I would say that some equivalent would also be there in the German education system. How did you identify your area of interest?
Well, actually, I started like with, let's say I was going to some education fairs, you want to call it like that, where it's different universities present what you can do, and you just go to the people and started talking with them, which was very interesting because I was pretty much shy at the age of 18. So I was accompanying with my parents, and that was one of the things that they say, okay, it's no shame to just get in touch with people, and thought, and actually thought like, let's do something with mathematics actually at the beginning. And I was standing there and talking to the people, and I realized like it's not quite what I was looking for, because I didn't really connect to the people and the problems that they have. So I was like, okay, why not do that? And there was one other school there, which was a private school, which was one of the more renowned in Germany, at least. And they said like, yeah, well, you can't immediately join. If you want to, you should present an undergraduate equivalent degree of very good grades on a renowned public university. So that's what I did. For example, I was lucky to be one of the best in my class. Actually, that made it easier to
Okay.
actually choose where to go. And I chose to go to, because I chose to go to majoring in business administration in Munich. And because it was like there were like 3 to 4 places to go, and 3 of them were in like smaller cities, and I was like, yeah, I don't really want. I want to experience the whole thing. I was coming from the countryside, so let's give it to the million metropolis people there's Munich, and experience everything that there is to offer. And have a good university where I can then excel and go to where I wanted to, because this was my plan A at the time. Yeah. So that's the story how I found what I was doing, is like listening to people and then figuring out that maybe business administration sounds is good because I can do a lot of with numbers and mathematics as well. And from that,
Sure.
attributed.
Oh, okay, great. So, more of, and I would say it is the situation is not so different in India, and I suppose other places also. India also, but yes, as far as the access to information is concerned, even at maybe let's say at the 10+2 level, it is not so much, but those who have access, they also explore along with parents. So they also go to meet universities, and now at least if you see the metro cities within the India, such I would say process is much more widely followed also. University would have their fairs, a lot of universities would come, programs, people would come and then share. And yeah, so but it's of course many cases people would have a lot of clarity from the beginning, but people would also have not so clarity. So even by process of elimination, that's how they narrow down to a particular program. So after doing that MSc and this program which you're doing, how did you land up at management at ESSEC? So if you could just talk about.
Sure, absolutely. That's interesting thing because like this plan A, when I was talking about like going to this renowned private university, when it was the time, I was like, I don't really want to leave Munich. I'll just stay here. I was doing a lot of extracurricular activities, if you want to call it that way. There was a job fair that we organized from the faculty itself, like this, like a student body, and I was taking over this thing exactly at the time and was in charge in secondary in 1 year. That was 2006, and in 2007 and 8, I was fully in charge of the whole project, which was a 3-day career fair with 150 enterprises. So I was like working, let's say, like 70 hours a week, just put that one next to the study times. And that actually was a really opener, actually, because I did the studies things, and I was very known at the university because I was like student body president at the time, and then I did that thing. And most of the professors knew me, and the student council knew me. And there is this thing in Europe that's called the Erasmus Exchange Program, which is in place to help people easier switch in between European countries to have the exchange done, for example. So they do a lot of work for you, you just apply. And of course, every university has, like, even the faculties in every university have their own programs. Like, the bigger the faculty, the more renowned. Unique is a bit renowned. They have a couple of exchange program places in place. For example, Warwick was one of the things I remember, and the ESSEC was as well. And essentially, I've talked with the student counselor and looking at everything that were presented. For example, there were actually only 3 people from the whole university that were admitted each year because they only had 3 spaces, and it worked out, luckily. I was applying for Warwick the year earlier. That did not work out, but for the ESSEC one, I brought a lot of to the table, actually, and that made it very easy. Not easy, it's true. It just worked out, you know.
Sure, sure. Sure, sure. So I observed that you also did a working student kind of role. So if you could just talk about what are those and how did it enrich your experience? Mm.
Yes, I was Munich. There's 2 reasons for a lot of places. In total, I studied after ESSEC. It took me a couple of years longer than I wanted to. We can talk about it later on. Essentially, I was constantly working in different things and looking at things. So I was working, for example, in total, it was like 11 placements I had, like stagiaire, I'm missing the word in English right now, and working student stuff. I was doing all of the time because I wanted the money because the Munich is an
Okay.
expensive city.
Sure.
So I had to fatten up my budget every month with something, and so that really felt in place. So I was working at the university, getting into one of the like it's like a practitioner role where you just say, okay, I'm helping the current students to just like help them with their works in the undergraduate part, for example. Then I worked at a fund, like some sort of hedge fund
Okay.
part. I was working at the MAN trucking company in logistics. I was working in a consultancy at the time. That I was working then once at an reality builder thing, where you just like do project development for buildings and these kind of things, and a couple more. And everything was interesting in its own mind because like the placements were like half a year most of the time, and I got a lot of understanding from everything, like from pharmaceuticals into financial industry regulations, into logistics processes, supply chain management. There's things you can always see and see, for example, how you can actually contribute. And that was at the end of the day, I had a portfolio that I could say, yeah, I worked that way. I understand that thing. I worked there, for example. I can contribute a lot from experience and not just from reading.
Sure, sure. Okay. So, Indians also, with what I have seen, in my experience, whether they go to maybe let's say UK or European countries or US, they also get into all these student-related jobs. So, with your experience in particular in Germany, how easy or difficult it is to, let's say, get a working student kind of a role? And what are the few strategies which people can utilize to maximize, get these opportunities?
That is a good question. And to be frank, for example, when I moved to Munich, I had no network, and
Okay.
networking always helps a lot in especially also in European places like Munich, for example. I applied a lot. It took me,
Okay.
just to be frank, it's like really, I sent out invitations and applications to a lot of companies at the time just to get one things, one placement. Yeah? It gets better over time, meaning like if you have the
Okay.
first step, you can continue, and that actually does work because the networking part applies. Where you say maybe you know somebody. People are very responsive if like perform, bring something to the table, and that actually is a huge door opener essentially. But it's like the first step is really frustrating. That first step into the door that opens it up. Yeah, I know the feeling very well. But you have to do it. It's like
Sure.
I
Sure,
don't, I
sure.
don't have
And
the best strategy
yeah,
actually.
sure. And sure. And how crucial it is as far as even let's say these working student maybe roles are concerned. How crucial is knowing the local language?
It's not that important anymore as it was in the past, really.
Okay.
It sure helps, of course. Looking at France, for example, I did one thing in Paris at the time, like after the ESSEC program, and just something small. Um, and I was most of the time in Paris. I was like in the last round for everything. So you come from the
Okay.
ESSEC, which is your huge benefit, in just like getting into touch with the people. And it's always been like second, third round, and it's like me against a French guy.
Okay.
And I was
Okay.
not that fluent in language, so it was most of the time wasn't me. So
Okay.
that in certain aspects, like in France, speaking the local language is very helpful. It's not that important in
Okay.
Germany anymore. Like business language we have is like English, and it used to be in English about in like more than 50% of the companies I work for.
Sure, sure. Okay, okay, great. So thanks for those insights. Cost of education is, of course, a very important aspect. Even in India, we have rising costs. US students are burdened under a lot of loans. Germany, when I was traveling and I did bit of comparison, and I'm primarily talking about the food expense, I found it is cheaper in Germany. So, as far as as far as the education expenses are concerned, in case let's say international students come, and since you mentioned that you were part of the student body also at your university, so how is the education expenses which work out, and what are various avenues maybe let's say universities utilize to acclimatize international students?
That's I can just like recall from memory. If you're a European citizen, which most of the time will in this kind of like not apply, you don't pay in Germany. It's like you have
Okay,
like some overtime fees, like if you go beyond your scheduled time that you need
okay,
to complete the studies. So there's something to, let's say, motivate you to finish in time. But you essentially don't pay for the university any fees, for example, like just to be there. Of course, this is for public universities. It's not for the private ones. For the internationals, I remember that there was a bit of a charge there, but I can't really remember the details.
okay, okay, sure.
It's not that much,
And
We're
how?
not talking
Sure, sure.
about. Hmm.
Okay, okay. No, but Germany is relatively much cheaper, and then you have that scholarship, so people take it. But how is it for private universities? Because usually my perception has been there are a lot of public institutions within Europe. Of course, there are a few private ones, but primarily it is public institutions which give very good quality of education. So how is the status of private institutions, and why people maybe would prefer it compared to public institutions?
Now comes the ESSEC part.
Okay.
The quality difference between the public university at the LMU and ESSEC is huge.
Okay.
In
Okay.
terms of like
Okay.
what you get, for example, like
Okay.
and the student body of the university in Munich, I don't know, it was more than 1,000 students. It's like maybe
Okay.
1,500 something at the time. It was really
Oh,
huge compared to.
okay.
So you were sitting in classes where 400 or 500 people are sitting there. And it's like
Oh,
this
wow.
huge room and everything is cramped. And it's like kind of like a filter, like if you can't pass it on, it's going to be reduced. So just in the later stages of university, you get exactly that feeling that you have when you go to a private university like the ESSEC, where we have a course that's limited to
Okay.
20 people. In the MBA program, we just like small batches of people, and we were all working together, so you know them pretty well. You talk to them regularly, so it's a total different perspective from the public university part. The teachers in Munich were great, like the professors and the associates that they bring with them. They were all pretty bright. That's the thing. So you can trust the rankings in Europe actually, from to saying, okay,
Okay.
yes, for example, ESSEC actually is a lot higher ranked for purpose than, for example, LMU, which was at the time,
Okay.
I think ESSEC was number 3 at the time when I looked at it, and LMU was like number 10. So,
Okay.
and
Okay.
you can feel it. I did feel
Okay.
it. Yeah, for me, for
Okay.
example, I would
Okay.
stay the whole time in the ESSEC part, which still.
Oh, oh, okay. Wonderful. So, so even public institutions, what you are saying is the student versus teacher ratio is a bit not. It's a very large.
Yeah.
And okay, so private institutions, that's what one parameter for preferring. Okay. So, going forward, what made you transition from the business role to where you are now in the software architect role? We're talking about it earlier, but for the sake of audience.
Absolutely. There was one thing I did not complete in during my time at let's say that normally you do, for example, the exchange program at the end of your studies, so you can contribute from what you already had and be a good representative of your university to keep the program, for example, of course, on an exchange level. And what I did not complete is like my specialty, because I hadn't decided it at the time. And I took statistics, which
Okay.
was coming back to, I wanted to do math at the beginning of it, so I thought like let's delve into statistics a lot, and so you get 3 or 4 extra courses in statistics just to get everything. It's like there was like in total 7 courses I had to do to get this specialty, and they required points from that one. So I was actually going out with a lot of like insights into statistic modeling, language processing, and these kind of things. Like, remember, this was 2012, something. So it's more than 10 years ago. Um, and I was very very proud of myself because I really worked into where I realized I was not good at the end of the day was like in international um, accounting and stuff, because I had to take this
Okay.
one of my professors retired at the time, and there was no replacement for 2 years, so I took an accounting course, which turned out not to be so good for me. And so I was finally done and was working at a telecommunications company in Munich. And now as the private part, for example, so I was done with my study finally, and looking at, I already had like been in a relationship for 2 years at the time with my current wife, and we was like, should I stay in Munich or should I just move to Vienna where she was living? And it's like, yeah, well, I don't right now have a job placement. Just let's do it. Let's go somewhere else again. Um, and that was very intriguing actually, to just like move again. So we did like the student moving part where, like you cram everything in your car and sell everything you
Okay.
can. Do it back and forth a couple of times between Uniqa and Vienna. And my dad had a pickup at the time, so we were even transporting like our washing machine, and during bad
Okay.
weather, it's really fun times. And so as me, I was in Vienna and was doing the same thing because like I thought like I finally did it. I finally closed it up. Let's just enjoy the city a bit, do what I want. So I started to study again because I was really interested in archaeology. Did that for half a year, and then I decided, okay, yeah, I'm pretty much running out of money. I can't really keep it up. Let's look for a job.
Okay.
Especially laid back at the time. It helps you just like really like from all. I do have to say, studying is hard. It's like if you have to keep everything in place, and it's a lot of work, and you keep on doing a lot of work. And from that perspective, I have to say, for example, having a regular job actually is less stressful than having a full schedule at the university. Um, so I was looking for a job, and there were a couple of placements, and I was part of some different European organizations at the time. I was still like doing stuff next to just like studying or working. There were a couple of associations where I was like traveling across Europe, and so I learned a lot, a bit from the people, and essentially they said like, yeah, you should look for really entry programs. And I was looking at entry programs, and it's pretty much, at least for Austria, it was like so. They only have one admittance time at a year. So if you want to do it like that, you really have to plan ahead, or just take into account that you're going to wait for half a year to get an answer into if you that. So I was actually like seeing that, and I was on my way with a bus to Aachen, which is in Germany. So I
Okay.
was like on a bus trip from Vienna to Aachen, and I said, "Oh, the deadline's tomorrow. Let's." I sat down
Okay.
in the bus, wrote my application, and send it out while on the way to another event at the time. And well, I did it a couple of times, so I was very busy at that one bus trip. And luckily, I got the invitation from my first company, for example. So they
Okay.
and they invited me to an assessment center, a 3-day assessment center somewhere in the Alps. So that was pretty neat, actually, because like we were up in the snowing part, and very good. It was interesting to have that one. So, but the decision was more or less like, yeah, but still, like I have, let's say, I got my whole resume full of stuff that's all the count for something, and I have so much work experience, like that's also count for something. And so I thought like this is going to be a good match. That was the one reason I said it's like I actually want to start working now something that is interesting to me. And I was coming from telecommunications company where I was working in the strategy departments, like where do you want and these kind of things, but just as a working student. So I thought that's a good match, and they thought so too, essentially. And the assessment center was like some kind of like sorting algorithm, like where you say, okay, everybody does like we were like 50 people, something like that, for around 15 spaces, and like 20 to 30 managers from the company that they were looking into the people. And essentially it was like there's a couple of job offers that were like predefined, and then they said like who's the best candidate for the job, and that's what you get offered. And everybody wanted to do 3 to 4 jobs because they sounded the most fancy. Myself as well. I did not get that one, but then I talked to my boss, Michaela. She was like, "You're perfect for that role. Can you think about it? Like, let's sit down and talk about it. Like, this is the thing I see from you, and this is what I want from you, and this is where you really excel at." And just the thing made me forget, for example, that I wanted to do something else. And it was like, actually, yeah, that's cool. So she really guided and counseled me the right way to say, okay, yeah, that's the first placement that makes sense. So let's do it. Um,
Okay, wonderful. So a lot of guidance also, and then I would say initiatives which you took. So tell us about your work at this insurance entity, Uniqa, and
Yeah,
what you do, because insurance is becoming, of course, very important area. I don't know how much you are engaged with the business side of it. You are primarily doing the technical side of it, but given a lot of weather phenomena, a lot of maybe let's say issues arising, of course, insurance agencies are also becoming quite impacted. So if you could just talk about what you do at Uniqa.
absolutely. I'm currently employed for like let's. I just started at like mid of like last year. I started a position, so that's pretty fresh in the sense of our insurance company. And what I'm doing is enterprise architecture. So I'm for the technology part. So there's a whole framework around that, for example, that defines what is actually part of the technology. And I'm currently in charge of like doing the technology cloud part. So we have a cloud, of course, strategy, and that is already in place. And we use cloud services heavily. And I'm overseeing this also. I'm doing the architecture review. So I'm looking at, is this like in a design that we can use? Is it something that that makes sense to the company to go in that direction, for example, so pattern recognition, pattern this definition for architectures, and looking at especially on the technology side, meaning like where do we go? Is that something that we should invest more people, time, and knowledge building, for example, upskilling people in this kind of sense, and looking at, for example, all of the cloud vendors, for example, like the, the like the Microsoft or Amazon Web Services, these kind of things, for example, where you be in touch directly to a lot of representatives in the technical part. You discuss the technical features, you look at the roadmaps of them, for example, like where do we go? Is that something that how we can apply? This also applies, for example, for things like AI that are like on vogue right now. So this is all on my table, for example, to look at and to sort them out, to define together with management. This is coming to the business side now. We are, as enterprise architecture, not alone. We are a whole team for different aspects of the company. Um, Guide managers or consult managers into what we should do, for example, for certain requirements that business has, and business is moving in a lot of digitalization projects into into like stepping all of the agencies, all of the people across our 18 countries that we serve in
Okay.
Europe, for example, with the right tooling and the right technology in place to help them, of course, sell more. It's still
Yeah.
at that point.
Okay. So, given you experience even in the, let's say, choosing an education option, you have moved from different kind of roles, transition, even in work, different kind of transitions. And now, in case I can use term that we are in the age of AI, where a lot of transformation, a lot of rapid changes happening, and economies, of course, across the world, which are transforming quite a bit. So, based on your experiences as a student, as also as a professional, in case you have to give guidance, in case you have to give suggestions, how one should choose career options and what kind of maybe let's say readiness they should have, what
Mm.
would be your suggestions?
It's actually like all those STEM stuff really pays off. That's the thing. So if you are in a major that is concerning around any kind of like scientific processes and these kind of things, just and you get to the point where you say, okay, I understood it on an abstract level enough to, and then you really can use that one in your professional life. So it's either like if you're there and you want to do professionalize in, like, let's say, your academic career, then it's absolutely great to do that, because it's really a benefit to the whole of society to have that one. And if you say, for example, I'm ready, let's say, to use that one. But that is actually one of the things, for example, that's helping me a lot. Like because of that statistics specialty, I was able to understand what other people that do, like, let's say, the whole study course of mathematics or statistics are doing, because I understand the models, I understand what they do, and looking at the results, for example, I actually talk to them like a peer. That helps a lot in understanding. And then now coming back to the AI part, well, yes, of course, it's statistics in its core. There's not just the generative AI or like drawing pictures with prompt engineering. There's a lot more models in place that you can use, for example, even for programming part. Just look at GitHub Copilot, for example, as a Microsoft Tooling, for example. They get active help for any kind of task that you want, for example. But if you want to go there and say, how does it work? For example, how can I make it better or like suitable for the company? Because not everybody can just go and use it. This is where it gets very technical, and this is where, again, like mathematics concepts and these kind of things are discussed. So, and that helps a lot. The business side helps, of course, a lot in getting financials and these kind of things. So these kind of like experiences contributed a lot to say, okay, yeah, I can actually contribute there and understand what the people do and guide them if they need guidance on a larger level, for example, because I understand where they're coming from.
Sure, sure. So thank you for nicely putting it up. So in case I can rephrase it, having a scientific temperament, and of course, trying to understand that what is maybe, let's say, a particular, whether it's a piece of technology or whether a piece of process, how it is going to play out with people. So having that kind of mindset, that kind of approach, of course, it will help because AI, as of now, and hopefully in future up to it will be remain, it would be a remain a tool and the tool which people would have to utilize. So thank you for giving that perspective. Now we are almost at the end. So just one last question. Based on your experiences as a student, as a professional also who did a lot of job searches and then moved also in different kind of roles in different geographies, in case you have to give two, three suggestions to people who are moving to a different country location, either for academic work purpose or for maybe let's say professional, what would be your two, three suggestions to make most out of those experiences and how to get most benefit out of those experiences?
There's three things. Okay, like one of the things is like be open-minded. It sounds stupid again, but it really helps. For example, I was a shy person at the beginning of my student life, and I was like, I don't get enough, let's say, contact to people. I feel like left out. So I radically changed myself to be open to other people, listen to them, talk with them, try to understand their point of view, for example, and that gets you into contact with a lot of people. And then you can still, let's say, okay, I like this person better, but then you are in the position to say, okay, you can actually follow other people or use their network, be part of something. That still applies, of course, for do just let's sign up for one of the clubs that the university offers. It's really fun. Just do it, for example, and it's the same. Be open, for example. Just be friendly to people. Just try to understand what they're coming from, and that helps give you a lot of insight into like what they're coming from and what they can contribute, for example. But it's like not asking them to contribute something. It's like you're just being part of something, and that's something I really look at. Just be part of it, and then you can see a lot of other things. It was the same with the ESSEC part. I was at
Yeah.
one point then later on approached by people like, hey, do you want to come with us to do something like that? It's like trip to St.
Yeah,
Petersburg. Yeah, why not?
yeah,
But I didn't do it in the end. I was at class, for example, but it was like really fun to say, okay, why not come? Let's
yeah,
fly around.
yeah,
So
agreed, agreed.
that's really cool. So
Sure, sure.
this the openness stuff. Try to get as much external experiences, and this can be a lot. That kind of like translate into either people business or like let's say like some technology scientific approach. Like I wouldn't say anything else is a lot of work. Is really contributing to that, but it's like if you go, for example, to a student organization or association, try to talk to people, to just understand people, to be able to talk to people, and develop your kind of like personality. It's always good to be lighthearted and talk to different people. Just again, and the third one is, of course, don't overdo it. That's my take from university. It's like you can always learn more, you can always study more, you can always like, but be sure that you know how much you can afford to lengthen it out, and be sure that you say, okay, let's say I'll just take one step at a time. That's the learning I had at the end of the university part for me. It's to say, okay, let's focus on one thing. You can't change the world in a day. So I know I have, let's say, that amount of time left. I'll just do one course less, so I have less stress and I can do more of the other stuff I like to do.
Sure, sure. Thanks for nicely putting it up. Being open to experiences, networking, reaching out to people, and having external experiences, even in the work, etc., and taking one thing at a time. So rather than maybe trying multitude of things together, take one step at a time. So thank you, Martin, for sharing all your thoughts and perspectives. And it's a great pleasure to have you here.
Thanks.
So I'll just stop the live session.